After the police knocked down a family's door, officers took 3 kids from their parents in an overnight raid. All of the children inside the house were then placed in separate foster care homes. When the public learned the reason, authorities quickly fell under scrutiny. The Arizona Department of Child Safety and the Chandler Police Department in Chandler, Arizona, drew criticism after police conducted an overnight SWAT team-style raid, where officers knocked down a family's door and took their children. After being removed, the 3 kids inside were placed in separate foster homes, but separating the siblings is the biggest reason the response quickly drew scrutiny. The raid was allegedly conducted all because an unvaccinated toddler had a fever. According to the family, the 2-year-old little boy spiked a fever of 105 degrees. Around dinner time, his pregnant mother took him to the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine clinic in Tempe, where the doctor became concerned because the child was unvaccinated. Fearing he could have life-threatening meningitis, the physician told the mother to take the boy to the emergency room. Although she initially agreed, the unnamed mom changed her mind about taking the boy to the hospital when he began laughing and playing with his siblings after leaving the doctor's office. She rechecked his temperature and saw that it had allegedly dropped. With the boy's temperature returning to close to normal, the mom called the doctor around 6:30 p.m. and explained that her son was better and that she no longer wanted to take him to the ER, the Arizona Republic reported. Allegedly, the mother also expressed fear of getting in trouble with the Department of Child Safety, DSEX, because the child wasn't vaccinated, but she was assured that wouldn't be the case. The unnamed mom reportedly once again agreed to take the toddler to the ER, but after 3 hours, the hospital called the doctor to report that the child never arrived. When the mother didn't answer her phone, the doctor called the Department of Child Safety. DSEX then called the police, requesting a welfare check on the toddler. Officers arrived at the family's home around 10:30 p.m. and knocked on the door several times, but the parents refused to open it. According to police records, the boy's father told officers that his son's fever broke and he was fine. DSEX then told police they were seeking a temporary custody notice from a judge in order to take the sick toddler for emergency medical aid. The temporary custody order was granted around midnight. Based upon the court order, the intent of DSEX to serve the order, and exigency to ensure the health and welfare of the child, the decision was made to force entry to home if the parents refused to respond to verbal requests, the police report read. After consulting with SWAT and the Police Criminal Investigations Bureau, officers returned with a warrant and knocked down the family's door after 1 a.m. with guns drawn. Surveillance footage, seen below, was released by the father and shows the officers' use of force. The family's attorney said such use of force should only be reserved for violent criminals, Fox News reported. Although police admitted there was no criminal incident and neither parent was arrested, the Department of Child Safety obtained temporary custody orders for the sick toddler's 2 siblings. All 3 children were removed from the home and placed with separate foster care families while DSEX conducted a review of the kids' grandparents to see if they could be entrusted with the care of the children. In the meantime, both parents were being forced to undergo psychological evaluations and complete a family reunification plan before officials would consider returning their children to them. The case quickly drew outrage from both parents' advocates and legislators who were furious over the way it was handled. All because of a fever? It's absolutely ridiculous, the family's attorney said. The imagery is horrifying. What has our country become that we can tear down the doorway of a family who has a child with a high fever that disagrees with their doctor? Republican State Rep. Kelly Townsend said, criticizing the raid, at that point who now owns control over the child. And it seems like we've given that now to the doctor and the parent no longer has the say or they risk the SWAT team taking all of your children and potentially the newborn. Lori Ford, a member of a Department of Child Safety watchdog group called Arizona DX Oversight, also seemed to agree. They, DSEX, had no right to bust into this family's home and take their kids, she said. But now they, DSEX, have control of this family. These children are traumatized and all over a fever that wasn't even a fever anymore when they went to the hospital, just like the parents said. The raid not only caused public outrage, but also sparked a larger debate about the balance between parental rights and state intervention. Many question whether the response was proportionate to the situation, especially given the parents claimed that the child's condition had improved. Critics argued that the aggressive tactics used to enforce a medical decision set a dangerous precedent, potentially eroding trust between families and healthcare providers. Parents' rights advocates emphasized the emotional toll the situation likely took on the children involved. Being removed from their home in such a dramatic manner and placed in separate foster care settings could have long-term psychological repercussions. Experts in child welfare pointed out that traumatic separations, especially under such tense circumstances, could lead to anxiety, trust issues, and even developmental delays in young children. Adding fuel to the controversy, the family's attorney highlighted inconsistencies in the handling of the case. While the Department of Child Safety claimed it was acting in the best interest of the toddler, critics noted that no medical professionals were present during the raid to immediately assess the child's condition. This raised questions about whether the operation was truly about the child's health or a punitive measure against the parents. The case also drew attention to Arizona's policies regarding unvaccinated children. While vaccines are widely encouraged, the state allows exemptions for personal or religious beliefs. Some saw the family's ordeal as a violation of these rights, suggesting that their decision to forgo vaccinations played a significant role in the aggressive intervention. "It feels like they were targeted," one local activist said, pointing to a growing tension between public health priorities and individual freedoms. Public protests soon followed, with demonstrators gathering outside the Chandler Police Department and the Department of Child Safety offices. Signs reading "Protect Families, not bureaucracy, and parental rights are human rights" could be seen as crowds demanded accountability. Many called for an independent investigation into both the raid and the broader practices of the Department of Child Safety in similar cases. Lawmakers from both sides of the political aisle also weighed in, urging reforms in how child welfare agencies handle such situations. Some suggested that instead of involving armed police, medical professionals or social workers should lead initial welfare checks. And this could have been resolved with a simple conversation, said one state senator. So instead, we have a family torn apart, a community outraged, and children who may never forget the terror of that night. So the incident also reignited discussions about overreach by Child Protective Services. Arizona DEX had previously faced criticism for its handling of other high-profile cases, including allegations of neglecting to intervene in situations where children were genuinely endangered. For many, this case exemplified the agency's misplaced priorities, sparking calls for greater transparency and accountability. Meanwhile, the family's struggles continued as they faced numerous hurdles to regain custody of their children. Critics described the mandated psychological evaluations and reunification plan as excessive, considering there was no evidence of abuse or neglect. "The system isn't helping this family, it's punishing them for seeking medical care," said a child welfare advocate. Public pressure eventually led to a formal investigation into the decision-making process behind the raid. The Chandler Police Department and Arizona DEX promised to review their policies, but for the family involved, the damage had already been done. For the children's grandparents, who had been deemed suitable caregivers, were finally granted temporary custody, but the siblings' separation had already left its mark. For many, this case served as a cautionary tale about the need to reevaluate how agencies tasked with protecting children interact with families. "We all want to keep kids safe, but this isn't the way," said Lori Ford. "When the system itself becomes a source of trauma, we have to ask whether it's truly working in the best interest of the child."